Hello, and welcome to Harder Than It Looks, Parking Uncovered, a podcast to facilitate connections and illuminate real solutions to common problems within the parking and mobility industry. I'm Brian Wolf, President and CEO of Parker Technology, and I'll be your host as we speak with parking professionals from across the industry at all levels to uncover tips, tricks, and best practices to manage what we all know is harder than it looks. Parking a car. On the show today is Joseph Madison. Joseph R. Madison is the Associate Director of Parking Operations at Kennesaw State University. The parking team at KSU oversees over 16,000 spaces between two campuses. These spaces are shared by over 43,000 students, 5,000 faculty and staff, and a host of welcome guests. Prior to relocating to Atlanta, Joseph worked with organizations including the Maryland Transit Administration, Montgomery County DOT Parking, and the City of Baltimore. In addition to his parking duties, Joseph has done a TEDx talk entitled "We Are the Neighbors, We Are the World," published an article in Parking and Mobility entitled "A Closed Mouth Does Not Get Fed," and is a member of IPMI's Allyship and Equity Advisory Group, which is where I first gained exposure to Joseph. Today, he's excited to share his experience with the parking and mobility industry, and I'm excited to tap into Joseph's energy and storytelling abilities. So, Joseph, welcome to Harder Than It Looks.
Thank you so much for that. Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to get you on. I know you must be a busy man because 48,000 or so odd people we know it's harder than it looks. So thanks for scheduling the time.
Absolutely. Glad to wear many hats in this industry.
You do indeed, and you wear them quite well. So that's one of the reasons that I decided that we needed to get you on the show to get you a little bit more exposure. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get Joseph Madison II exposed.
Hey, let's do it.
So what I like to do with the guests is get out of the way, hand you the mic. I talked obviously a little bit about your background, a few of your stops, but I'd like to get your story. So you can go back as far as you'd like and tell me Joseph Madison II's story, because ultimately it will lead us to KSU and your parking job today. But go ahead and tell the world your story.
So look, I'm just a kid from Mobile, Alabama, raised in Maryland, who was educated by the university in Alabama and landed in Georgia somehow. Along that path, I wanted to make sure it was one of service so that you could see the motto in life at Alabama A&M, which is where I graduated. Service is sovereignty. And there's nothing that can show proof of freedom than serving in the industry that I'm in, right? As a parking professional, people are usually looking at me like, what? A what? Parking professional. Nobody ever pays attention to those stripes that they put their car in between, or the trash cans in the parking lot, and the maintenance and service, or even the building of a parking lot, deck, or garage. They just take that for granted. Once they leave their house, they expect one for their car to be. So through urban planning, I learned how to build cities, and how to grow a municipality. I studied urban planning at Morgan State in the city of Baltimore. So that gave me real life exposure to how things happen.
Yeah.
You don't just put your car on the street and there's a meter there. We actually got to measure how many feet those posts are so that we can have enough room for the average size car. And actually start to answer questions like, how are the neighbors, or how are the residents, or how the business is impacted by the decision of these actions or these activities, right? So
yeah,
from Mobile, trying to figure those pieces out about how to move people safely and effectively throughout the states that I live in.
Yeah. Okay. So you were in urban planning in Baltimore. Is that where you did it first?
Yeah, I was started out as a planning assistant with Baltimore City Department of Planning over at 417 East Fayette Street. That's where all the projects happen. There is no parking lot without an approved set of plans. You can't build a building without the parking. You couldn't build a building without the parking minimums. That's changing a lot. Thank God. Thank you. And the more cities we see dial back those parking minimums, the efficiency we see through some of our site plan review committees. And we don't have to review turning radii, and we don't have to review those things when the building get built. So we've already taken out the parking, or some of these people that want to build parking lots and decks underground that have the money to spend for some strange reason. That's part of that process. So understanding that from conception to execution is where I found a decent little balance in the parking world.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Figuring out where to put parking spaces. Now that parking minimums are disappearing it sounds like you're okay with that because that drives efficiency through the system. So people get effective at using the parking that exists as opposed to adding more. And then you were saying something about underground parking, and that's when we lost the thread. So you said something like, for those who have the money and the inclination to put underground parking in, so go ahead and pick up on that thread.
If that's the case, fine. But I just think that I don't believe that's the right direction to go in for future planning, because with so much that I learned last week at IPMI, like how do we implement? And I think one thing, the cost per space is exorbitant when you can better utilize the space that you have through the autonomous parkers. We don't have any of those anywhere in the region that I know of, but I would love to see if we're doing away with parking minimums and we have a little bit better space. Let's get creative and find spaces for those autonomous parking garages.
Yeah.
Pull up, tap the card, and it's gone. And or looking at it that way, we start thinking more about how that data can control, how we can use that to control the flow of traffic egress, especially after events. We're coming up on World Cup, so I'll go ahead and start and tell you that's where I'm headed with the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So will Kennesaw State have a World Cup site, or will it be close enough to you?
We're 43 miles north of Atlanta, which best case scenario, they may want to utilize a practice facility. Worst case scenario, I'm not supposed to know this, and I've already said it, but hey, this is common sense, right? You're going to look for best fields for practice and conditioning in a global market, and we're within what would be a reasonable reach. I think that it might happen. I don't know that it will. It's my disclaimer, right? But if it does, even better, because they're not contributing to the madness in the downtown area. Have you seen one of those crowds?
They are a little nutty. And parking is already tough with big events. And then you get World Cup like events where you've got Europeans and everyone around the world coming in, makes it even tougher.
The largest sporting event venue, or I guess the largest attended sports events in a while. And we're talking about way more traffic and way more people than a regular day in Atlanta.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm tuned into the next 24 months, and then we can get some rest.
Yeah, and as I recall, your wife works for the city of Atlanta, the Planning Commission. Is that right? So you're probably absorbing some of that stress as well.
She's with the city DOT, so they've got to answer these questions.
Yeah,
just both happen to have a similar background, and if I've got answers, you got answers. If I know anything, but my intent is to make sure she's got access to some of the industry's best practices so that World Cup already has a home and they already have a set of solutions so that they're not scrambling.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so give us a sense so you told us we got in the bio that there are 43,000 parking spaces, but give us a sense for how KSU is laid out. You said there's 2 campuses. I think it's a commuter campus, and so that puts even more pressure on parking. But tell us a little bit about the layout, the technology that you've got running. Just give us a thumbnail sketch sort of the parking operation.
Okay, so we're on 2 campuses, what used to be Southern Polytechnical. The schools merged several years back. We've been navigating that change while growing. I think it was about 38,000 students when I first started 5 years ago. Now we're up to 43,000. So on the Kennesaw campus, we have majors like nursing. We've got the music entertainment business program over at MEBUS. We've got a partnership with Wellstar for that nursing program, right? So that kind of brings a lot of the nursing school or nursing majors to our campus and navigate a really slim amount of real estate with those folks. However, I don't know the online percentage, but it's mostly been a commuter school. However, because of that growth, we've had to respond in providing beds and get residents ready for new students. We just opened up a Summit housing complex. And at the same time, every time the building goes up, we lose a parking lot. And we just lost Rodo. I understand. I just want better utilization of the spaces we do have. You can't always park close to them.
Yes. As my good friend Don Charlie always says, people want to park under their desk. And then I've also heard other university parking managers say that there's plenty of parking. It's just usually not exactly where the parking public wants to see it. So that is the challenge of enticing them to park where you have spots versus where they want to park.
And along that, there was a complaint, we're late for class, we can't, proper planning prevents poor performance. But I probably my neck wrong for that one because that's not really, but that's how I was raised through college, right? You plan well, you execute well. We know that it's going to be a 15-minute walk. I was in the marching band as a freshman, right? I played the euphonium, which is why I was excited to see the Ohio State marching band. Shout out to Kappa Psi. But I went to class with my horn, in addition to my book. And I knew how heavy it was tracking from class to band practice back to my room. And we didn't have any bus. So as a student walking up and down a hill, falling and of course rolling down the hill, because that's how bulldogs are made, with an instrument, I found that it was useful in helping to plan and execute my day. And it's just a matter of showing you that you have Wi-Fi on the bus. You've got plenty of everything you need to get from one spot to the next. Golden. On the hill, we didn't have transit.
Yeah.
This was in the 90s, we didn't have buses to carry us to class. We had to plan effectively. And that included being late for class, having an understanding with professors and building relationships and knowing exactly when to use those relationships versus when not to.
Yep.
Don't over abuse those privileges. But we always invite our professors in the class to the halftime show or to the football game so they understand why we are how we are in those classes.
Yeah. And plan, right? If you know you've got a 15-minute or 20-minute walk, then you need to get started earlier. What I always loved the insight that when you're late, you blame it on external factors. And when others are late, you blame it on them. Right. Until you internalize the fact that when you're late, it's probably because you didn't start early enough. And I've always tried to flip that insight. And at least if I'm late, take responsibility for not starting soon enough and not blaming traffic or whatever. I can't blame it on traffic in Indianapolis anyway. There's no traffic here, relatively speaking, right?
It's Atlanta. Of course we can blame it on traffic. Look, of course Atlanta's full. Like, full for everybody, for people who are solving transit and transportation problems.
Yes, of course. Then you don't have any traffic problems.
Hey, I enjoy a nice podcast while I'm driving. I know.
Yeah.
Probably check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Which podcast should I be checking out?
Parking podcast on Spotify.
Oh, yeah.
Where you leave your house.
Yes, exactly right. Okay, we know Isaiah Mao quite well.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the technology that's running at KSU. What are you guys queuing up there?
We are queuing up Genetech, right? We utilize tech for LPR in rotation, and what we're going to do different, right? That might be the nugget, is we're going to utilize those trucks for semi-fixed LPR, right?
Okay.
At strategic locations throughout campus so we can gather data.
Interesting. And what do you hope to learn?
Our permit behaviors. So we might have someone with an economy permit entering the core campus. We might have someone with a shuttle permit that's entering the core campus. Just by having that number, it helps us adjust either the signage because they're not reading outgoing messages because they're not checking it out, or we just might have to be able to adjust our enforcement team and put them where they belong, identify different locations.
Yeah. Okay. So how big is your parking team there at KSU? Handful, small.
Yeah. We're small but mighty team. We've got 2 LPR drivers, 2 managers, one for each campus, myself, and we have a director. Outside of that, we share some staff with our transportation team.
Okay. And then how do you handle events there?
Our transportation team. We've got an amazing team that handles the event. They come through our campus-wide event, and then filters over. We identify where they can park. As we grow, we're looking to change the end user experience on events specifically. For game events, though, we use a third party, same as University of Alabama and similar.
Yeah. Okay. So you're letting people reserve parking before they get there and then hopefully point them to the right direction.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then tell me a little bit about how you communicate with your students. Is it all email or you've got mobile, you've got text? What kind of communication is outbound to your students and to your faculty and staff?
I tell you, Brian, that's the part that's harder than it looks.
Yes. That's why I'm asking.
And the reason I say that is we can't utilize text messages for outbound messages. They're are certain limits to the way we can communicate. So we've got certain opportunities to communicate through our permitting software, but we have some opportunities to communicate via posted message or via the website, and then some through our marketing team. So we have a team that's completely dedicated to parking and transportation within our market.
Yeah, that's a key piece. That was a pro tip that I've picked up over the years, is having dedicated marketing folks that are constantly updating and outbound communicating to the parking population, because they're like everybody. They're not probably reading the first email. It's probably the third one that they're getting.
And the third one usually happens after they've already pulled up to a lot that close.
Yeah.
So we'll just change in the physical realm, we've changed the way we demonstrate or display that a lot's not available or spaces within a lot. We make an exit, pull entrance, do not enter signs posted, and it's plastered parking and transportation, and it's closed and it's clear, right? That prevents us from having to chase people down to move them if we've got to do some maintenance.
Yep. Okay. I've heard these stories a lot about chasing students, having to move people because they weren't paying attention to signs, and then ultimately those that feel like they should park right next to the building, even though they're not permitted to do so, or they didn't pay for a permit or what have you. So how do you handle enforcement? Would you call KSU benevolent? Where are you on the meanness meter?
I think I would like to say, I think I would like to say message moment. I don't want to speak forever, but I hope that those people that have met me and actually talked to me about parking have realized these parking people aren't so bad. It's just the job that they chose or that they have to do. They've got to create order and safety on campus around putting cars where they should belong. And I try to sell that message a little before I try to go. We don't want to penalize or be punitive, but we definitely want to educate on why we need them to engage in a certain behavior. Because after I've given you case in point, if you're walking through the parking lot and I just see you hit the keys, hey man, you might want to save yourself a couple pieces of change, read the fine at the lot, at the lot entrance, and know what permits required. Because that might save you a little piece of coin. Sometimes they get in their car and they go, never see them again. Other times I'm just going inside for a minute and they end up with a parking ticket, and then we've got to explain to them, I just gave you the warning and gave you the choice. I can't tell them to not write the ticket. I gave you the choice. And the education piece is such that if we show you why it's important to put your car where we need it, then we can continue to grow as a university, and we can help facilitate the planning and design and construction function. We can facilitate the growth of new residents, as mentioned. We can transform our university into an R1, R2 research school. Slowly but surely, but that's just having your cars where they belong is just a prerequisite.
Yeah, education. So you said something that early on in the answer that I'd like to leap off of if I could. And you said, okay, so I'm going to engage the parker because then if they know me, they'll be more inclined to listen to what I say and appreciate where I'm coming from, as opposed to just being this anonymous person. So I listened to your TED Talk.
Wow.
And I thought it was really interesting. The neighbors. So let me get the title. It's in my notes here. We are the neighbors. We are the world. And it talked a lot about getting to know your neighbors. And the better I know you, then the better I understand who you are and where you come from. So what was the inspiration for the TED Talk? And tell me a little bit about the experience.
So our neighbor, our world was the theme for the overall show. And this was the topic within that theme that I chose. TJ Mercer said that I nailed it when it came to aligning with that theme. And I'll talk more about her a little bit later, maybe. But nailing that topic meant getting a message out that no matter who's coming to the neighborhood, to your house, we're all in one space and we've got to share this space. And I wanted to send that message because what did it look like when we treat our neighbors and our neighbors' friends like we're all one happy family or set. And it just tends to change like the living experience. I had an amazing neighbor when I lived in Laurel, Maryland. And I'll call him Coach Steve because that's his name, right? And Coach Steve and I just high and by in passing, and we sat back on the back porch and chatted a lot. And it made me realize that no matter where you are, if you don't know your neighbors, what's the point of even traveling the world? We can get the resort experience, but that doesn't give us any real life experience. So when I talked about our neighbor, I was thinking about those conversations with the neighbors the actual neighbors I've had in the past, whether in the suburbs or in the inner city. And it just made for a great conversation piece to talk about how awesome my neighbors have been. Literally rocket scientists next door, literally wealth managers, right? Like just engaging in conversation alone helped me re-envision my path in this industry.
Yep. And then there was a part in the TED Talk where you talked about, and I was rolling through it. I didn't go back to listen to it carefully, but there was a part there about your neighbor calling the police, and you were hoping that you wouldn't be the neighbor that would call the police. You'd hope that you were the neighbor that would actually just come engage you and get to know you. So was there a story behind a story there?
So there are stories nested in that statement. There was stories nested in that statement. One, I didn't have cable, home phone, or internet at my house at the time. And to get a reception, I had to go outside. So I had a lawn chair. I was sitting outside talking on the phone because that's the only place I could get reception. I couldn't even apply for jobs because I didn't have cable, home phone, or internet, and I had to go about 1.5 miles away to the public library. One of my neighbors said I was suspicious and called the police on me. The police arrived in car number 1, got the information, explained my kids are a couple of 100 yards away asleep. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm not going nowhere. I just need to be able to talk on the phone and communicate. Car number 2 comes and starts asking questions that were already asked and answered, and I'm not fun with that. And then car 3 comes and says I'm not being cooperative, but the issue had already been de-escalated.
Yeah.
And my interaction with the police at that time was to either be an enemy or a foe, right? So it shows at that moment that my goal was to walk away from all police interaction. So we got to that, and then sooner or later, all of the cars were gone. The issue was not an issue. And follow-up calls were made as accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Didn't have to be an escalated issue with 3 cop cars, 6 officers after car number 1 had already resolved the piece. No cable, no home phone, no internet on my couch with my cellular provider at the time. And this was when I was in between jobs, right after I left the parking authority.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that story, first of all. It's hard to listen to, frankly. And so I appreciate that you allowed me to dig a little bit, because candidly, what I'm attempting to do is shine a light on experiences. I'll just share my own perspective on that. So a couple of years ago, when the Black Lives Matter movement started with George Floyd, and then there was Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, I was probably the regular pale male talking about troublemakers or what have you, and not really appreciating the situation. And then I had a couple of Black gentlemen that I'd known really well and who had been really successful in their jobs. One had started a couple of companies and gone on and done great things with startups, super successful. And they started publishing stories about being harassed. And I thought to myself, if these clean-cut guys are being harassed routinely, then it's happening all over the place, and it's happening routinely. And that was really the catalyst for me opening my eyes and wanting to be more curious about the experiences, because if it was happening to them and these were guys that were living where I lived, if it was happening to them, then it was happening everywhere. And that was the point where, unfortunately, or fortunately, I suppose, it jolted me into paying closer attention. So I appreciate you sharing the story, because it's important to me.
Indeed. Thanks for that. Because that in and of itself lends itself to the reason why we have to speak up for ourselves. You mentioned the allyship piece. We've got to be advocates and allies for ourselves, but we also have to make sure that we're creating spaces and places, platforms and stages for voices of all ages and all races. I'd say that again, but I can't.
I could see you're starting to get into the routine that I saw at the Allies and Equity Advisory Group, where I could tell you were going to be a great guest when I finally got you on the podcast, because you have experiences, but you're approaching it from a perspective of helping us all understand, helping me understand. I'm still learning every day, and attempting to do what you talked about before in your article at the IPMI, on the IPMI website or the magazine, is talking about building bridges. And I think that's super important as well. I've tried to be intentional about reaching out, and a couple of the individuals with whom I've interacted with talk a lot about the importance of providing access and providing opportunity to bridge networks together. And so that's the other piece, or that's the second piece of my stool, if you will, of just trying to be a part of the solution as opposed to ignoring it.
Absolutely. Like, how can I be fill in the blank, right? How can I be an ally to your success? How can I help you level up? How can I learn from you so that I can even level up myself? And that the important part for me, right? You mentioned my wife. We wouldn't be talking if it weren't for her, right? She sent me my very first job posting in the industry of parking. And this was back when it was IPI for the Mobility Institute that was at. So in all things, especially in this space, I just want to make sure that you guys know I'm going to make my family proud. I'm going to do those things that are necessary to ensure that I leave it better than I found it. I'm going to walk that walk in a way that leaves absolute breadcrumbs that nobody can fail if we go in the right direction.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And I'm a big fan of that perspective. I talk a lot about my kids standing on my shoulders, and for me to be a good example for them, to be able to see the world as it is, and to support and to be advocates for those that definitely didn't have the privilege that they grew up with.
Is it my question time?
Yeah, sure. Of course. You've got questions for me. I've got answers, I think.
How did you get into the podcast space?
How did I get into podcasting? I will tell you that it struck a chord with me when I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about the ability for someone who puts out a podcast, or that produces a podcast, to actually build community around a topic. And so for me, one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is that I've been in parking 8.5 years. And the day before I got into parking, I was just like every other John Q. public parker. And that is, it's just parking. How hard could it be? I'm putting a car between two white lines. I'm pulling a ticket. I'm paying when I get out. Like, it's just parking. And so I'm on a bit of a mission to help, first of all, commiserate with those that are in parking, because I want them to know that I see them and I know it's harder than it looks. But I'm also attempting to build a following outside of parking, so that those outside of parking can hear parking stories and appreciate that parking is a lot harder than it looks. So that's the mission. That's what we set out to do. And Courtney, behind the scenes, is doing a great job of helping me build a list and or a plan around doing all the things that we can do to help parking people feel like they're appreciated, and more importantly, that we're getting the word out that parking is a lot harder than it looks.
Oh, awesome. I got a couple of suggestions.
Okay.
You mentioned our enforcement earlier.
Yes.
One of a few schools that utilize students we employ students for the purpose of deploying citations or educating the parking public.
Yes.
Our ambassadors. We don't want them to have the gotcha mentality. We want them to have this idea, this thought process that, let me interact and show you the best solution that's going to save you some time, permit. But if you're not, and we have those people, right? I hate it's the mindset, but some people really don't really care about how many tickets. They just pay them.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're not using our students to just do that. We're showing them how parking relates in almost every single field that they're in.
I like it.
That have graduated and have continued on to become lawyers and such. I'll pick up the phone and call a friend and say, hey, listen, I've got a student that wants to study law in the LSAT feedback, or do you have mentorship capacity.
Yep.
I will do that all day for my students. When they meet me, before they even know that I'm the associate director, sometimes they'll know that I'm interested in what your major is and how I can help you articulate the value you add to our team just by participating.
Yeah.
So you're in finance, that's fine. We've got a trading floor on campus. I walk them over to make sure that they understand how far this can go, right? You're in accounting. There's so many accounting things you can do in parking, even behind the scenes, right? Understanding the report is a crucial piece. If you're in marketing, we have an entire team over with our Stratcom that I would love to figure out how to help them get connected with. How can I get you to those things that are moving where you're moving? And in so way, I've helped you sustain your mission to get the word out about parking and parking people.
Yep.
I've contributed to the industry as a whole. And I've also made sure that I've thought about longevity in a lot of these roles, because we may ship someone off to get new skills that they never knew they needed in parking.
I love that. I love a couple of things about it. First, you're trying to grow people first and foremost, not necessarily parking people, which is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see you've got a big heart to make sure that that you can do everything you do to help the people that you come in contact with. And then I hear the big connection. I'm a connector myself. I love to connect people. I tell folks all the time that once I get to know you are now a part of my network, and if there's somebody in my network that I can connect you with, that I'd love to do that for you, because those are things that make my heart sing, is to try and help people make connections. And I know how powerful those connections are. I suspect that there are lots of people that will pick up the phone because I told them to talk to Joseph Madison or whoever it is that called, because of the strength of the relationship that we have. And that's really, that kind of thing is really important to me. And I can hear that it's important to you as well.
There's a very critical poem, is what I'll call it. It says, I have a really big team. We need some really big things. I do have a really big team. We're small, but the effort that we put forth together is really huge in this campus environment and in this community environment. And if I call Brian and say, hey, listen, I got a kid, I just need to make sure he lands somewhere in the parking space, you already know that I thought it out, I vetted it, I've made sure that I've reviewed them, and I might even look at them and say, hey, don't embarrass me.
But yeah, of course you will. And I would hope that, but you know what? That part of that vetting is gone on. By some people getting to my network, there's already been a certain level, because if they're knucklehead, they're not going to make it through, unless of course they're young and I have to give them a little grace. But in general, no knuckleheads don't make it through my network.
And that's where the great happen.
Yeah.
So the ones who do make it through, their job is to retune those knuckleheads if they come back around.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay. Let's keep moving. I have a series of questions that I ask all of my podcast guests. And so if you'll indulge me, it's not really a lightning round, because I'm expecting longer answers from you, but let's give it a shot. So my first question is, what phrase are you known for? So in other words, if someone on your team or someone in your family utters a phrase and they immediately know that was Joseph Madison that said it.
If it in my children's ears, how to do anything, how you do everything.
Okay.
If it's at work, measure twice. But
okay. All right. If you do, so what was the first one?
How you do anything.
Oh, how you do anything.
Is how you do everything.
Yeah.
I can call them and say that, and you can say that, and they'll finish it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good. I like that one a lot. I'm going to write that one down. Okay. All right. So the next question is, what is the hardest thing you've ever done? And this is in life, and we'll get to parking in just a second. What's the hardest thing you've ever done?
Fatherhood. And it's complicated.
How many children do you have?
3.
Okay.
A twin and a young adult.
Okay. Yeah. Parenting is hard stuff, for sure. You never quite know whether you're doing it right.
You're never doing it right. That's what you got to get used to.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose that's true. And and then I'm guessing with your young adult, at some point you have to just trust that you've instilled the right core values and the right stuff into them to not embarrass you.
I'm glowing with happiness at the mention, right? When I did my TED Talk in the background, one of the pieces of art that she did is in the background on purpose because I'm so proud of her as an artist. But
Yeah.
to watch her implement these pieces of lessons that were ignored for so long,
Yeah.
that is why I love to wake up and shine. The energy I have is because when I say this to a kid, this is so that they can continue to know that way beyond just waking up and going to work, there's this life and there's this image of dad that says, and he did all that stuff so we would actually have a path forward. Art on the easel in the background, but it's outside and I didn't want to move it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I can see your proud father. That is fantastic. Okay. So now what's the hardest thing about your parking job? What's the hardest part of your parking job?
The many requests to do opposite of rules and regulations. That's the hardest part. No, I'm not waiving a ticket. If I waive a ticket, I will literally take it and waive it. That's it. Don't ask. Go through the proper process and let's figure your life out.
Follow the rules.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So then if you could wave a magic wand and fix anything in parking, what would it be?
Ooh, magic wand, anything in parking. What would it be? It would be the future of parking. I would fix that.
Okay. Well, tell me more.
People crash into your parking garages and break stuff and leave it and don't tell you to discover it. Anyway, so magic wand, perception that parking is.
Yeah.
It would be the understanding that once you leave your house, there is no obligatory anything.
Okay.
Nobody's obligated to provide for you. You got to pay however much they want to charge if you don't own the land. And if you do own it, cool. But if you're in the city, you've got to follow the rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And I also would wave that magic wand, rewind all the way back to parking wars, and make sure that the contract to do parking wars was in at least 15 to 20 cities throughout the nation, so that the people who are actually doing these horrible behaviors would see the reflection in their own community. So that they identify that this is the international scope of parking we're talking about. It's not just your neighborhood or somebody else's. The big picture is that this is how we treat our guests and our friends and our neighbors.
I love it. When you leave your home, there is no obligation on the parking owner's part to provide you parking.
Correct.
You have to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to have to pay whatever you're going to have to pay in order to park your car.
Exactly. Like you don't own the space. And sometimes when I talk about parking, I always talk about the drinks that people pour out.
Yeah.
You're either pouring coffee or you're pouring out juice. Coffee is an acid and it's going to erode the concrete. You don't care about that. You just wanted it not to be in your cup holder. And juice is sugary and it's going to attract ants and bugs and wasps and hornets. But you don't worry about that because somebody else cleans it up. Let's find where those two meet and let me educate you accordingly, because somebody's got to be responsible for leaving it better than they found it. And I sound like parking does need a dad, right?
Yeah. Parking needs a dad. And I'm guilty as charged. Sorry, I won't pour coffee on concrete anymore. I'm sorry.
It's outside and it's the gutter. That's out of my domain. But just in the parking decks, I don't think people realize that the effect of the acid on that concrete or even on that steel if it gets exposed, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So just some things to consider, but most people aren't looking at anything in that byline.
Yeah.
They're just thinking park the car and go.
That does bring up a second point about harder than it looks. So one of the other misconceptions I had when I got into parking is that you put up a parking garage and you just start printing money in the basement, right? What I did not appreciate is that there's a tremendous amount of upkeep that needs to be done in order to keep those facilities, first of all, clean, okay? Second of all, stable, and third of all, accessible. And those things don't fix themselves. They don't clean themselves. They don't pay for themselves from a taxes perspective and labor perspective. And so there are valid reasons why we need people and we need to pay for parking.
And also keep in mind that when we're talking about these parking structures, we're talking about the parking. We're not talking about the lots.
Yeah.
We're talking about gravity.
Yeah.
From my life lesson, I've learned that gravity always wins.
Gravity always wins, indeed.
So let's make sure that we keep those in a way that gravity doesn't
Yeah.
cost a lot of money.
We'll keep gravity at bay if we can. Okay. All right. So next question is, when you're not parking cars, what do you do for fun?
When I'm not parking cars, I garden. I wonder if you could see that from here.
Okay. Yeah, I can see flowers for sure.
So that's this spring's collection. Some marigolds, some periwinkles, some of these and some of those. But I like to serve, right? I really do to volunteer. I mentioned I would probably find a way to insert the conversation about TJ Mercer.
Yeah.
I volunteer with the Move In Day Mafia, right? We are a group of volunteers that descend upon college campuses to help college freshmen who have aged out of foster care. Once foster care hits and you're 18 and you go to school, what happens, right? Often that's where it cuts off. So for these students that are attending HBCUs throughout the country, dorm room makeovers and care packages throughout their years so they can do nothing but focus on being a student.
I love that.
That's fun because imagine what happens when we leave one system, establish a new set of systems, right?
Yeah.
And this new set of systems is one where students can thrive instead of worry about surviving.
Yeah. What's the name of the organization again?
MoveInDayMafia.org.
MoveInDayMafia.org. Okay. All right. And
I'm going to post that, hey, I just made sure I dropped it in that. Y'all got to watch this podcast.
yeah, for sure. All right. And do they take donations online?
Of course.
Okay. All right. I've been known to make donations to podcast guests, MoveInDayMafia.org.
I'll be sure to send the link over.
Okay.
Wrap. And if you watch Celebrity Jeopardy, there was someone there that played for that cause. And that was a $30,000 donation to Move In Day Mafia. So
wow.
Imagine in year one, it was 13 students and 2 or 3 different HBCUs. Year two, 33 students. And year four, 44 students.
Wow.
And we're going into year 3 and we're trying to cover all of the HBCUs. So
wow.
If we've got students that are aged out of foster care in almost all of these states, let's not worry about how they're going to survive their year. Let's give them a reason to thrive and let's make sure they understand that people even in parking are talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. So what does it take to outfit one room, or what's sort of the average per student?
The average per student was about $1,700 in year 2.
Okay.
And that includes the refrigerator and the microwave, and it includes the sheet and the bedding, and it also includes a variety of things that are customized to that individual student so that they know that someone was listening, someone was cares, and that they're not alone in this journey.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I'll get you at least a third of the way there for one student. How about that? What a great cause. That's a great cause.
Yeah. I come from a single parent home growing up through 7 different elementary schools. And my story isn't the same, but I understand because those were some of my classmates growing up that I didn't know what was going on at home. I used to work in the school systems as a substitute. So the children come in and needing changes and clothes, and they needed the support. So if I return to the classroom, I'll have solutions, not just judgments like a lot of people. I want to be able to solve a problem for the guy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Okay. So then my last question is, what are you most proud of? And you can say your kids, but then you'll have to pick a second thing if you're most proud of your kids.
Honestly, I'm most proud of my journey, right? I talk about how I went from making $10 an hour as an intern to becoming the associate director of parking operations, right? From an intern to there, that's a huge leap over a decade and some change. So I've been in the same role and same capacity for decades, or in the same job in 20 and 30 years. But I wanted to take and make progress that I can take some footsteps that are followable. And in doing that, I'm extremely proud. I had set a goal and I did quite meet that goal, but I made that goal a little bit bigger, right? And I'm proud of the journey. I had no idea I was going to publish articles that would be printed in the International Parking and Mobility Institute magazine. But here we are, showing allies how to show up and appreciating the allies that do show up.
Yeah. Awesome. That's fantastic. All right. So I've gotten to the end of my questions, but it's comments like that make me think that I may have missed nugget. So tell me what questions should I have asked you, or what things do you think are important to be able to share on this humble medium?
Everybody's different, but encourage that authentic voice to show up. You do that very well, which is why I was excited to come on, right? From the moment we met in Florida to now, I've always thought about how can I ensure that I add value to your show? How can I make sure that you say the ratings from the show were a little bit higher than you expected? My goal is to help people move commas and move decimals in any way, shape, form, or fashion. If we need to reach millions, I can talk that stuff, right? I love hip hop. I'm going to talk about that Millie talk. I'm going to talk about that Billy talk. Love hip hop, but also love Metallica. There's that.
That's funny. All right. Well, you and Ryan Givens he is our Western regional account executive.
Mm-hmm.
Loves Metallica also. And good guy. Used to be a university Parker. He worked for Penn State, and then we scooped him up a couple years ago. So you'll have to connect with Ryan sometime. Yeah. Yep. It's good stuff. Okay. All right. You like Metallica, you like hip hop, and you like to add value and move commas. I like that a lot. That's good. That's great. Okay. Joseph, thank you for sharing the time with me, and appreciate your kind words. And I'm sure that this episode is going to go viral. And if you or I or Courtney has anything to do with it, then it's going to be a huge success. But just the fact that you contributed to the conversation means a lot to me. So I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And listen, folks, you're not just putting the car in between two lines. You're helping participate in an industry that reaches almost everyone. And that's why it's absolutely harder than it looks.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. I should leave it there. Okay, welcome back to segment 2 of Harder Than It Looks. With me today is Todd Firestone, the head golf professional at Meridian Hills Country Club. Todd has been at Meridian Hills for 9 years. Before that, he was the head golf professional at Fort Wayne Country Club for 9 years and Tippecanoe Lake Country Club for another 8. So in total, he's been a club pro for nearly 30 years. So I invited Todd to the podcast because we all know that hitting a golf ball is harder than it looks, and we'll certainly touch on that. But the real reason I wanted to bring Todd onto the show was to shine a light on the intangibles that he brings to his job so well. You'll immediately see and hear his passion to lead with a servant's heart and to develop people in what we know can be a challenging arena. I'm sure you're going to come away with a few tips and tricks for leading, motivating, and inspiring people to do their best work. Todd, welcome to Harder Than It Looks.
Thanks again, Mr. Wolf. Looking forward to it.
Hey, this is my podcast. So on my podcast, you get to call me Brian.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Today only, we'll go Brian.
Yeah, I get it. That's good. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the formality. We're going to get into all this and have lots of fun with this. But the first question I want to ask you is, tell me what led you to become a head professional, and what does the process look like? I'm sure there's a grinding process to becoming a head professional. So give us a snapshot of what it takes and why you wanted to do that early in your career.
That's a great question. I grew up, my dad was a basketball coach my whole life. So I really thought that was the direction I was going to go. I attended Grace College. I played basketball there. And after my sophomore year, decided to not pursue basketball anymore, but I was playing golf. And that fall, the course that we played at, the professional there asked if I wanted to help a little bit in the shop, because as far as the grind, which we'll touch on a little bit, mid-August, you want to talk about the grind for a golf professional because you lose all your help. All your high school, all your college help is gone. I told him, sure, I would love to do that. And I'm telling you, I fell in love with it right away. I went back, switched my major to business because I was in education. I thought I was going to become a basketball coach. And immediately, right when I graduated from Grace, His name was Don Dicken, my first mentor. I asked him if I could work for him. And the process that I went through is totally different than what Tristan and Dylan are going through that currently work for me. But it is a grind. And the good news is it's like anything in life. It's like the Evans Scholar, right? We tell them the cream has to rise to the top. I think the big weeding out process they use is the playability test. And when I went through it, you would go to a golf course and it was 36 holes. They would tell you the score on the first tee, what you had to shoot. Oh, yeah. And so now, right now you're sitting there, you're trying to do the math. All right. And normally it's whatever, 152 to 154. Okay. And now all of a sudden you get a double bogey here or there. And now you got that score in the back of your mind. But that is that first step before you can then start all the education, which usually takes about 3 years to get through it. But I think they definitely use that because, again, as you can tell in my job, I don't play that much golf. I could play every day if I wanted to, but I don't think that's what you guys want me there for. I did play this past weekend, and it was interesting. I had a member come into my office Sunday morning. He'd been a member there for a long time. He said, "Hey, Todd, I need to talk to you about something." So normally that's either a bad thing when I hear that.
Yeah.
But we went into my office and he said, "Hey, I saw you were on the tee sheet yesterday morning." I said, "Yeah, I was." I said, "There was a last minute entry." And I said, "You know what? I actually really enjoyed it." And I said, "My old self kept me from not doing that." And I said, "The good news is it gave ownership to my current staff." It was a busy day. Saturday was a beautiful day.
Yep.
But he said, "Todd, as members, we cherish those 4 hours if we can spend that on the golf course with you." And that sort of put a light bulb into my head of my old self. When people would ask me, I would use the busyness of my job to say,
Yep.
"Sorry, you know what? Thanks for the invite. Let's do it this fall." But I really appreciate him coming in and telling me that. Now, I can't play golf 5 days out of the week, but that did put a light bulb into my head of, hey, you know what? I have to try to do a better job of, and again, I can't play with the same guys every time either. There's games within a game that I have to play.
Yep.
But I just really appreciate that member coming in and sitting down and talking to me about that.
Yeah. Okay. So the what's interesting is you can thank me for that slot on Saturday morning.
You know what? No,
and
you're exactly right. Yes. So now, how crazy is that? You are the reason that I got that call that night. But I'm just telling you, my old self would have been the quickest no to that phone call. And that phone call had our club president in the group. Does that make sense? It's just,
I was super psyched to play with Dennis. And then personal circumstances got in the way. And then when I saw that you got slotted in, I'm like, oh man, I want to play with Todd.
I know. But no, it was interesting. I was talking to my boys last night, Jack, who is starting to play a lot of golf now that his baseball career is over. And I said, hey, I actually played Saturday because I played the new course the first time with my two boys.
Yeah.
Maybe the weekend after we opened. I can't remember that, but I just told him, I said, man, I really had a great time. Took a caddy. It was the kid's first loop. And then in the other caddy, that caddy for Mr. Dye was his 100th loop. So it's awesome. Just the things in my job that I really cherish now of you look at the impact of what golf can bring, not only to you as a member, but to me as a professional. I get to walk in there every day. But to those kids carrying those bags, you could see the smile of that young man knowing that was his 100th loop. Yep. And that, it makes those 13, 14-hour days, to be truthful with you. I mean, I love what I do. I looked at it now. It's an act of service that I love it. And no, you're right. I do need to thank you for that because it was your consolation that got me the call that night. So.
That's perfect. That's perfect. All right. So you're bleeding into my second question, which is, of course, running the golf program at Meridian Hills is your job. Tell me about the 10 or 20 things that encompasses, because what you just described doesn't happen very often. And I'm sure there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that I don't even know about. Give me the top 10 list of things that you have to be worried about on a daily basis that none of us will ever see because it just works behind the scenes.
It's interesting. I call a number of things the it factor. Okay. And I've got two young professionals. It's their second year back with me now. And I tell them both, certain things that we go through each day, you're not going to learn at, especially Dylan, because he did go to a PGM accredited college to become a golf professional. But what I love and try to train them and let them actually see how, if we don't do this, what this creates for us all day, or if we do this, just watch and learn. I'll play dumb. I'm going to let you guys do it. You guys be the hero. And then when the member comes to me at the end of the day, goes, "You won't believe what happened today." I'm going to be like, "What are you talking about?" Now, once they tell me that in a positive, then I do pull them both in my office and say, "Hey, you know what? The stuff that we talked about this morning, you just made a raving fan out of this situation that when we looked at the tee sheet this morning, this could have been the biggest fire that now we're babysitting all day." Okay.
Yeah.
So really the first thing that I try to do each morning when I get in there is I look at that tee sheet and I just see if there's certain situations, and most of it is what are the players that like to somewhat play faster, if they're a single or a twosome. I love the shotguns at the beginning of the year because there was no singles and twosomes. But can we be proactive? Can we reach out to those members early in the morning, say, "Hey, we're looking at the tee sheet. Here's a situation that we see. Would you be willing to either move forward or move back, whatever?" And we did that to a member that didn't have his best experience last week. Okay.
Yeah.
And the one good thing I love about you guys, I tell both my staff, I'll never be a golf professional at a privately owned facility. I want to be at a member owned facility because everybody's a member and everybody's passionate, and they will let me know whether they're happy, mad. Usually if it's an average experience, they're quiet. They won't say anything. Okay.
Yeah.
But my main thing I grade the days on are how many communications do I get from you guys that are the positive. And so I study that tee sheet. I call it, you have to control the pulse of the tee sheet. You have to. Okay. Now, do I have 2-3 meetings a day? Do I have 4 or 5 lessons a day? Do I have members, which I love, wanting to tell me every shot of their round? So
I would never do that.
But amongst all of that, I have to always check on the pulse of that tee sheet.
Yeah.
And now around that, how's my bag staff doing? Adding Hector into the locker room. This is a true story. Sunday morning by noon, I counted 6 people that literally came up to me and said, one was a brand new member. His words were, I just can't believe I waited this long. He goes, "The fun that you make when I walk down that lane, and now I walk into the locker room, and what Hector makes it be fun." And I mean, I heard that word fun, and Todd, you appreciate when we're walking down that lane. Hector appreciates it. Another member said, "Every one of your staff knows me by name." And so those are the things that I really try to work hard on behind the scenes. You're right. There's ways we can cheat. You know what I mean? Everybody's got radios. There's a reason why I stand on that first tee during busy times, because I can see people walking down the lane. I can see people making the turn. I can see people that are walking into the golf shop. So I can, through the radio, "Hey, Emma, Ryan, this is Mr. Wolf coming into the shop," or, "Hey, Margaret, this is the guest of." So there is ways we can cheat, but you better have people visible that know how to cheat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So that to me is, I don't know if you've recognized, but on the back of all the staff shirts is Indy 21 this year. Hashtag Indy 21. I went to a seminar this past winter, and it was a great seminar. The guy ends his speech with a slide that he puts up on the screen, and he says, how many times do you think an adult smiles in a day? And everybody's throwing numbers out there, and he goes, 20. Then he says, how many times does a kid smile in a day? And he says, 4. Now, life happens, right?
Yeah.
Life happens. I've used that motto, okay, for my staff, everybody on my team. How can we be that 21st smile when they step foot onto property? Now, you're right. Is that helping someone that's got the shanks hit a solid shot? Is it, I don't know if you heard, but Phil Nicely passed away this past Saturday. He's a legend at the club. All right.
Yeah.
We have that maintenance hour every day on the tee sheet that Jared needs. And this would have been on Saturday. Yeah, I think, right when I finished playing, Sally and Nancy, Phil's daughters, were there waiting for me to tell me that. And I just said, hey, because I know these 3 boys are really good golfers. One's at DePaul. And I just said, hey, if they need to come over here and play, I'll put them in the maintenance hour just to get their mind off some stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they did. They came over. Even Mrs. Nicely, bless her heart, she was riding in the cart. I go out, give them all hugs, just said, hey. And she was like, man, I wish Phil was here. I go, no, he is up there watching. Man, he's looking down right now going, man, half of my life was at Meridian Hills. When I left that night, they delivered some nice snacks that they put on my desk. And I think it was either Emma or Tristan and Dylan, I can't remember who, took a picture of it and texted it to me. And all I sent back was hashtag Indy 21.
Yeah.
There you go. It's trying to get my staff to realize we are in the feel-good business. Yes, we get to do it in this arena of golf. But I think, Bri, between you and me, that's really what I spend all my time on most of the day. Even when I played golf, I'm just telling you, if I'm not waving at people, because I think everybody's doing double takes, like, is that Todd over there playing? If I don't even wave and acknowledge, okay, those are the little things that I have to realize. I remember I had a young man who was a very successful golf pro. He called me 5-6 years ago, and he was leaving a golf club to become a head golf professional at a country club. And he said, hey, Todd, what's going to be my biggest difference? And I said, okay, here's the deal. And I go, again, you don't have to do this, but golf club, you can leave the golf shop, and if you're going to the lesson tee, you can go straight to that lesson tee, start the lesson, fix his golf game, shake his hand, say thank you, and go right back to what you're doing. At a country club, and I won't mention names, but I knew where he was going. I go, when you go out of your shop and you get in that cart and you drive by that outside patio, if there's anybody sitting there having drinks, you better get out of the cart. You better walk up, thank them for playing that day, give them a high five, do whatever. Then when you have to pass by the tennis courts right there, if you don't wave and holler, or I go, hey, I might jump out of the cart and go hit a serve with them. Then you have to get back in your cart. Then you have to go start your lesson. I go, are you getting the gist? I said, a country club, Brian Wolf isn't just Brian Wolf. Brian Wolf has Sumner, has wife. There's community to every member, that if I can't become a part of not just 420 members, but a community of 3,000, then now you're not doing possibly what really you could be doing to have an impact on that whole community there.
Yeah. Wow. So you said so much in that answer. I have to tell you, first of all, you are the best that I've ever seen at it, and I've been exposed to several. But it is that. It is the It's the personal touch that you put on every interaction that makes it special. And I'll tug on my ear for anybody for all that are listening. It is, if you want people to care, you got to care first, and you've got to put a personal touch on it in order to get that across. And you got to stop. So I think what you told me is if your lesson's at 1:00, you're going to have to leave the golf shop at 12:30 because it's going to take you a half an hour to get to the practice tee.
And I'm telling you, Brian, if let's say, because I did get caught up in some meetings, I know ways how to get to certain places where I'm not seen that much. Does that make sense? No,
Yeah.
I'm just telling you. Sometimes people will say, hey, let's go this way. And I'll go, just follow me, because to be truthful with you, if I'm doing my job, I'm probably not going to get to that point when you need me to get there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's, again, one of those behind the scenes. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit on my questions. You don't know that, but so you have, I can hear the passion pouring out of your pores, right? And your servant's heart, which is, again, this is why you're here. So how do you build that culture around with your team? Like, so obviously you can put up slogans, Indy 21, and you can tell them, but there has to be, what's Todd Firestone's secret sauce to getting his people to do it too?
I think that's the question, right? Here's what I tell my team, and the ones that get it, I've made some hires that don't get it, and I hate to say it, they have to move on. I'll sit them down right when in the interview process, and a couple of analogies. Don Dicken, my first mentor, when I asked him, hey, Don, would you mind if I got in the PGA and come work for you when I graduate college? He shuts the door, sits me down, and I get it now. I get why he said this.
Yeah.
He says, hey, I like you as a person, but for you to be successful in the seat that I'm sitting in, you have to care more about the members' golf game than your own. Right now, you're a college golfer, but you've not had the experience of making Brian Wolf's experience better. And when I sit down with Tristan, Dylan, Emma, Ethan, Bagstaff, I meet one-on-one with Bagstaff. Yeah. Here's the deal. We are no better than anybody else, okay? But I'm going to use the analogy of I played NAIA basketball, all right? My boys played Division I, okay?
Yeah.
Expectations of Division I and NAIA, I can go home on the weekends and see my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Division I, there is sacrifice to be the elite.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pre-warn you guys right up front. I think I'll be one of the best guys you've ever worked for, but this is a D1 program. This is what it's going to take to hang a championship banner. I can't be everywhere at all times. Here's the responsibility and the roles that I need each of you on this team, because my hats are a little different, right? Yes, yeah. I am a golf professional there, but I'm also a business owner. You know what I mean? There's so many different roles on my staff that it's a daily communication. I will say this now, when I do hire people, that they are getting a better version of Todd today than probably what it was 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years of. I think I've become a more, I don't know how to say it, little more balance of, before me saying no to that opportunity the other night. I'm not saying I'm not a perfectionist anymore with work, because I still am. I'm hiring good people now and getting them to understand their role. Yes, there's times that I have to bring them into my office and say, hey, you know what? I love you like a brother or a sister, but here's where some areas I really think that you got it. Come on, I believe in you. You can do this. Now, is it going to bring you out of your comfort zone? Yes. But again, remember the D1 NAIA speech? NAIA, you can stay comfortable. You cannot be stretched. You're going to let the fear stinking control your life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it is, and I love it when I can see not even all the way down to the caddies, which they're not even really employees of mine. But when you can see that, I call it public relations 101, right? It's
Yeah.
when you can see them look you in the eye, when they can have some self-confidence.
Yeah.
I'll throw some names out here. Good old Dylan, like Lasecki. This kid, and I told him this the other day, man, hard worker. This guy, he'll beat me to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A
But
grinder.
he is a grinder. But like I said to him, hey, come on. You have to shake more hands than I do today.
Yeah.
I need you to be visible. Yes, there is work I need you to get done, and you can do that early, you can do that late, but I need you more visible during the prime time.
Yep.
And man, I told him the other day, like, Dylan, you're getting it. Man, I'm
Yeah.
seeing it. And the members are seeing it. So those are I think it's trying to get them to understand what they're truly signing up for.
Yep.
I love it the other day. It could not have been any better timing. I can't believe we're in July already. I could see they were tired. I could see it in their eyes. And we were back there, we were talking, and Coach Boylan walks in the office and he say, hey guys, what's going on? And before he left, he goes, hey, I want to tell you guys something. He goes, I appreciate what you guys do for me as a member. He goes, you guys sacrifice and give up a lot to do what you're doing here as professionals.
Yeah.
You know? And he had no idea what we were just talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
And when he left, again, it was just like, hey guys, I hear you. I know I know we're all tired. Okay.
We're tired.
But look at the impact that we got on these people. Not selfish either. It's not selfish. And if it's something that you truly aren't passionate about, then it's definitely not the right job, because we work when you guys don't. Does that make sense? I mean, holidays and weekends is when we got to bring our A game. And so I think to build that culture, Brian, I think I got to lead by example. I can't have bad days. If I am having a bad day, I think it's a good thing behind closed doors with my staff where I can show vulnerability. And I've gone through some bumps in the road the last couple of years, and my staff made our operation not miss a beat. Does that make sense? And, And sure. I told him that. I said, hey, I may not be around as much like I normally am right now, just through some things that I'm going through. But for me to be able to be vulnerable, be emotional with them, show them that I am a human being, but then also be able to thank them. Yeah. I think that when I'm not there, I think they stick their chest out and go, you know what? He believes in us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And there's probably some days they don't want me there. You know what I mean? But I'm okay with that. But just some personal trainer. I go 3 times a week. My old self, I didn't even think I could leave work for a half hour to an hour. I thought the walls would fall down. But when I get back, I'll ask, my staff will tell you, what's the first thing Todd does when he gets back? He gets on the cart, he goes out, and he says hi to the people that he missed. So I try to lead by example, because when they move on and they get their next job, which hopefully is going to be a head pro from Meridian Hills, I told them the other day, there shouldn't be one thing that you guys call me on and go, how do I handle this?
Yeah. Okay. So let me put a bow on that. So these are my observations around the culture that you've built. So first, you very clearly lead from the front. You've got a giant servant's heart. You hire good people. And to your point, the people that don't have servants' hearts or don't want to be there 12 hours a day and bring it at the D1 level, they move on.
Yeah.
And then in the end, you are so passionate about what you do that it just, again, it pours out of your pores. So I love it. I love it so much. It's good stuff. All right. Let me ask you this. This is the question that I've been dying to ask. So you've got a golfer on the practice tee. They signed up for lessons and their swing is really challenged. It'd be like you saw me 5 years ago, and my swing's not a lot better, but it was bad then. Where in heaven's name do you start? Because we know that hitting a golf ball is really hard, and we know that they're there because they want to get better. But when you see 10 things that need to be fixed, where do you start?
No, that's a good question. Definitely, most lessons that I have is not when things are going great. Does that make sense? And most lessons that I have, are they really going to put much time into it? Now, you did, okay? But you're probably in the minority, all right? So I have to, without really probing questions to them, I have to know, okay, how serious is he or she? First question is, tell me what the miss is. What is the consistent miss? Okay. But to answer your question, I have to simplify, because the stinking, like I was giving a lesson the other day, the access to YouTube golf videos is my job security.
Yes.
And
that's why I stay away from YouTube.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll be up there and this guy or gal say, I saw this. I'm like, oh my land. But a lot of it, Brian, is starting position setup, because a lot of players think their swing is bad, when in reality, when I'm standing behind them, I can already tell before the club starts moving if they're going to be able to repeat that or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's starting position. And then what I try to do is I really try to start from the ground up, because I always say, because the hands are the only thing touching the golf club, that is the enemy. That is when I'm playing my worst golf. It's when I feel, and I don't care if it's putting, chipping, or full swing. If I feel my hands being more responsible in starting the swing and starting the transition, it's a long day. But just like the round I played the other day, it took me 4 or 5 holes to get my big muscles controlling the movement of the club rather than my arms and hands. But I will get them to understand. And the first thing that I really talk about is the feet. And it's like this light bulb goes on of, if you have weight on your toes when you address the golf ball, you just eliminated your hips and your legs to hit a golf shot. You know what I mean? And they'll look at me like, what'd you just say? And I'm like, imagine I cut all 10 toes off, and now you have to get in the most, bless you, the most athletic position you can get. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 are like, my 10 toes were prongs in the ground, which means they're reaching for the ball. Their arms are already disengaged from their body. Half of them want me to change their grip in that first lesson. You know what I mean? They're like, I know what you're going to tell me. My grip's bad. And I'll tell you what, I've never changed a grip. That's like this monster change. Again, if this person wants to take 10 steps back before they start moving forward, then I'll go, okay, if you're dead serious here, we're going to have to change your grip.
Yeah.
But it's starting position and really getting them to understand what they feel in their feet, but then also the effortless power is in the hips and the core. And when the hips are tucked in, which is comfortable, don't get me wrong, comfortable, but now all you're doing is swaying, sliding. So it's what's interesting is Don Dicken, my first mentor, said, if you can't get a 7-year-old to understand what you're trying to get them to do to get a golf ball airborne, how do you expect a 50-year-old to do it? And what he was saying was, and I love him to death, bless his heart, of, yes, I have to be careful. Let's say if a Chris Eckerly, okay, better player, comes and says, hey, Todd, I need a lesson, which we did. This was maybe 2-3 years ago. I have to be very careful what I say to him, because he'll be like, what'd you just say?
Yes.
And I have to be, it might be very simple, which it was. And he was like, man, that's it.
Yeah.
But yet they'll go to these golf schools, pay thousands of dollars to get told stuff that they that this guy's hearing Tiger Woods talk about, and they're coming back going, oh my gosh, pro, it was unbelievable. I've heard stuff I've never heard before. But he goes, I can't hit the ball though. So that's what everybody's different. Do they want to see it on video? Do they want this engineer brain where I've got to, okay, yes, let me walk you through this. I was a field player. It's once I felt something, I'm like, got it. That's all I need today. I can feel that. Now I can repeat that. But it's that first lesson. If it's a train wreck, we just start basically with, before that club even starts moving, I need you to consistently address the ball better. Not, well, I missed that one, so now I'm going to move the ball back. Or I missed that one, so I'm going to get a little farther away. Or I missed that one, so now I'm going to swing. It's just like they start changing stuff that they shouldn't even be changing.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
But then they hit a couple good shots, right?
Yeah.
It feels like they're not swinging, which in reality you are swinging. Yeah. Then they got that little voice that says, I think you can hit it a little farther if you just – and then we take – and I'm actually glad that I see that in a lesson. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Then I go, there you go. See, that's what's going to happen in a round.
Yep.
And my whole goal is working with anybody is, how can I get them to feel something that when the train starts going off the track, not on the range, but on the golf course, that they can go, wait a minute, all I have to do is feel this. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, gradually, maybe that train starts getting better. But if they don't know that, like I said, they'll start changing things from a comfort standpoint. I always say, the more comfortable you are is probably wrong. The more it feels a little uncomfortable, it's probably right.
Yeah, that's good. So I was going to say something earlier. I'll try and get this in, and maybe they can dub it back in or they'll leave it here. But you were talking about your folks have to work when we're off, right? This podcast is a parking podcast. And so anybody that's listening to this will totally be able to relate because they're parking cars when everybody else is on vacation. Our business is running 24/7 by 365. Somebody's got to be here on July 4th, on December 25th, on January 1st, and all the days in between. Yep. It is hard and it is thankless many times because we do not appreciate that I can walk down the lane on July 4th and everybody's there when I'm not working. Yep. So thank you for that. Yep. I really do appreciate that. It's easily missed to the untrained eye for sure, but people who have to live it, they get that 100%. All right. I'm going to veer off into the ditch a little bit. We're running a little long, but it's good conversation. So I've got a couple more questions. So you put on your form something about singing at a wedding is harder than it looks. Okay. So are you a wedding singer?
I was.
Really? Can you tell us about that?
So I tell you what, I love music. All right. And I was in the show choir in high school, but I probably have sung in, I don't know, half dozen weddings of some of the friends that I had growing up. I was talking to Dylan and Tristan about this when I think they were actually trying to find out about your podcast. I sang the national anthem in front of all my peers of the Indiana PGA, probably, who knows, 15, 20 years ago. Jack Barber, who was the pro at Meridian Hills, was the president of the section. I think I was sitting on the board at the time. And he's, hey, Todd, this was like the night before. We're sitting in the board meeting on Sunday night. He says, hey, you want to sing the national anthem tomorrow before the meeting starts? And I'm like, sure, why not? I'll tell you what, the closer that we got to 8 a.m. on Monday morning, my heart's stinking pounding. My hands are sweating. I'm like, man, I've never had that when I've sung in a wedding. But it was in front of my peers. Like you just said at the beginning, they saw a part of me, Todd, in the golf spikes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where everybody in that room, I probably knows Todd in the golf spikes. And it was not a stellar performance. I'll admit that. But to this day, Brian, somebody live sings the national anthem before our meeting. So, and they're good. They actually bring the pros in for that. But no, that was that's something that, again, I was sweating bullets for that. But no, it's something that I've enjoyed, but I've not done it for forever.
Do you have a favorite song? Do you have a song, or do they request a
They
song
would,
and
they
then you've
would,
got
they
to
would,
practice?
most of them would request. One of my best friends, Rex Schrader from Grace College, he's a big country guy. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't remember the song, but it was a Vince Gill song
Okay.
that I sung in his wedding. But yeah, it's requested, and then I just whatever practice it a little bit. But
Yeah. It's probably Whenever You Come Around, if it was a Vince Gill song.
who knows? Because that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
but I do love music. I think music outside of work, it does. I think it's that balance of how can I find some things outside of golf that, I don't know, bring me some joy.
Music. We share that for sure. So again, you are doing a great job of being my straight man as you're just leading me right through all of my questions. So, okay. So in addition to singing at weddings and or listening to music, what do you do when you're not on the golf course or at Meridian Hills?
During the season, there's not much time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now,
Oh yeah.
Mondays are, thank the Lord this year that we're not open on Mondays, but Mondays are pretty sacred to me. I could play in a lot of tournaments, but between you and me, Brian, like I've already seen my trainer today. I try just to catch up.
Yeah.
Who knows? I might be going to Muncie tonight to have dinner with Trey. I try to leave Monday open. Jack's done playing baseball. I know he's in Chicago today, but I just never know. Maybe when one of those guys wants to be like, "Hey, Dad, you want to play golf this afternoon, or do you want to do dinner?" I really try to spend as much of that time with the family that I can. And then during the off season, Trey, our youngest, has still got some football left in him. So I can't wait for football season. So I'll definitely make every football game that he has. And I was able to make it to most of Jack's games this spring because we weren't open until Memorial Day. But
Yeah.
during the season, it's like we talked about, it's Tuesday through Sunday. When I walk away, like last night, I think I left it at 6. I'm not saying a fire can't spread from 6 to 8 because it can spread. All right. But I was visible from 7:30 to 6 p.m. and I am sticking to my guns. I am getting 8 hours of sleep every night in that. And man, that's been huge. I've done that for 2 years now. And I remember Jared coming in my office last year and he said, "Hey, gone. I want what I see that you have right now." And I'm like, "Jared," I go, "You got 3 kids. Now he's got 4. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm getting my rest." I said, "I'm still working out. I've been going to a therapist once a month or once a week and you know what? My old self would think that's weakness. You know what? It's not. It is, man, and I love it because I can use that now with Tristan and Dylan. I love it. When I was their age, I was passionate too.
Yeah.
If somebody was doing something, I'd go punch a freaking hole in the wall in the office. And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey guys, strength under control. Come on.
Yeah.
Strength under control." That's what my therapist is working on with me. Yes, I love it. You guys are passionate, especially Tristan. He shows it. But I'm like, "Hey, it's because you care. I love that. But let me help you because I was there too, you know?
Yep.
And let's analyze it. Did we not coach properly? Did we not communicate properly?" Now, if those kids are doing that on purpose to make my brand look bad, all right, yeah, then we need to make a decision. But
Right.
maybe we just didn't coach them or communicate to them properly. But
Yep. So that is that's a great leaping off point. Strength. So tell me again.
strength under control.
Strength.
Could
under
I have
control.
strength, Brian, and I've seen this with other peers, I could say no to anybody that steps foot on that property. I could use my title, I could use my position to use and abuse not only my staff.
Yeah.
"Hey, Todd, can I go off the back 9? Can I go off?" No, you
No.
can't. No,
Yeah.
"Hey, Todd, let's use your title. Let's use your position. Let's keep it under control. Let's really, before it's so easy to show the emotions, because in reality, that's probably only making me feel good for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Definitely doesn't
Yeah.
help the person on the receiving end, right?
Yeah.
And that's just been something that my therapist has really helped me with of, Todd, I can tell you love what you do. I could tell you'd never walk away. I could tell that, yes, it probably was hard to walk away, to go do stuff that watch a boys football game or baseball game. But you know what? You got to use your position now to put those that are under you, to let them understand why they are there. So when I go to a football game or baseball game and I come back, man, that place should run just as good, if not better, if I am
Yep.
at that game. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
those
And
are
it does, by the
things-
way.
Those are things that my blinders were just on that the good news is, I'm only 54 and I've got a lifetime ahead of me now that, be able to do. I'm going to be biking on the Monon Trail tonight, believe it or not. How crazy is that? I haven't done that. I did it last Monday. I loved it so much. I'm doing it again tonight.
There you go.
But those are just things I just didn't allow. It was just like, even Mondays, I hate to say it. I'm not saying I never flipped the switch. I've already had text messages from members today, and I can follow up with them and send it to staff that can handle it. But Mondays, it's just a day of, hey, let's do some self-care. Let's do some stuff. So come Tuesday, that batteries are fully revved, and Tuesday through Sunday, you're there and being present for the membership.
Yeah, I think it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it's habit number 2 or 3 is the P, production versus production capacity balance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to kill the golden goose. You got to take care of the golden goose so that they'll keep laying eggs. So I hear that loud and clear. That's good. I love the strength under control. I love the it factor. I love, what was the other one? Oh, there was another one in there. Shoot. Oh, the 21, the Indy 21. I love it. 21 smiles.
Yeah.
So it's obvious. First of all, I knew you were going to be a great interview because I've seen you in action and I've appreciated all that you've done for me and for my son and for the club. With all of our segment 2 guests, is everybody has a parking story. And I do realize I'm putting you on the spot. I could have given you a heads up on this. So tell me what your craziest parking story is.
Oh, boy. I will say, I'll tell you what, as far as, and I think maybe you and I talked about this one time. I can't remember. I know I was downtown one night and in a parking garage, and I don't know if it had to be a ball game, I would think. And I think I went out to dinner after the game, so it was late. I can't get out of that stupid thing. And then it says there's supposed to be a live attendant. No live attendant. So now I'm sitting here going, it's not taking my credit card, but you get flustered. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
tell you, there's thoughts through my mind. I'm just going to blow this stinking arm over.
Yes.
But luckily, then you refocus and you just see that little button right there that you can press to talk to somebody.
Yep.
And what do you know? I press it. I tell them what's going on. They help me out. The arm goes up. But
Success.
right. But it just shows you, though, right? I mean, that's a learning thing for life, right? It's like the answer is always right there. But when you get all flustered and everything, you don't see it, right? You want to blow through the arm. But then you got that voice going, there's got to be a camera somewhere, though. If I do that, they're going to see me. But then thank the good Lord above, I was able to just see that button and talk to the person. And they're like, okay, there you go. Have a great night. And the arm goes up. But overall, and I tell this to every staff person I hire, even Hector, I've taken him down to a couple of games. What other city other than Indianapolis can you go to a football, baseball, basketball game, leave Meridian Hills a half hour before tip-off, and park a car and get to the game? It's unheard of. And then when you leave the game, okay, maybe you have to wait a little bit, but it's nothing like any other city. So kudos to how you and your team have laid the thought into that, because it's not an issue. It really isn't at all.
We can thank our friends. Denison probably helps you out that depending on who the operator was, it was probably a Denison facility.
Okay.
So, but it would have been us answering the call. So
Well,
thank you for that positive feedback.
But man, I wanted to blow the arm off that thing.
Yeah, that's what most people do. All of us, we get stupid when the gate's down and when people are piling up behind us.
Yep.
Yep. That help button comes in handy. All right. Your late night steak turned into a help call. I love it.
Okay, that's a wrap on this episode of Harder Than It Looks, Parking Uncovered, presented by Parker Technology. Please leave us a review if you liked what you heard. Make sure you tune in next month as we continue to uncover tips, tricks, and best practices to manage what we all know is harder than it looks, parking a car. Bye for now.